People say you can often recognize the most powerful moments in life by how quietly they arrive. No warning, no sign, just a small voice that shifts something inside you forever. And on that cloudy afternoon, inside a warm cafe filled with the smell of coffee beans and fresh bread, Lena experienced one of those moments when a tiny voice said, "Can I sit here?" She didn't know yet that the girl who asked this question, small, shivering, wearing torn shoes, wasn't poor the way she looked. She didn't know the girl was a millionaire running from a world that suffocated her. She only felt something in her chest tighten as she lifted her head and saw a pair of terrified eyes staring back at her. The cafe was peaceful, almost too peaceful compared to the storm rumbling outside. Rain slammed against the windows, and people rushed inside seeking warmth, noise, and coffee. But the moment the little girl opened the door, everything around Lena seemed to slow. The girl was drenched, water dripping from her sleeves, hair sticking to her cheeks, her thin shoulders trembling in the cold. She clutched a small cloth bag against her chest like it was the only thing she owned. Nobody really looked at her. A few people glanced, then turned away, uninterested or uncomfortable. But Lena didn't look away. She couldn't. The girl approached her table, almost tiptoeing like she wasn't sure she was allowed to exist in a place like this. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "Can I sit here? Just for a minute. I won't disturb you." Lena felt something soften in her heart. She gestured toward the chair. "Of course. Sit." The girl sat carefully as if afraid the chair might collapse. She placed her bag on her lap and held it tightly. Up close, she looked even smaller, her face pale from hunger, her fingers red from the cold. She didn't ask for anything. Not money, not food, not help. She just sat, staring at the steam rising from Lena's cup, her eyes filled with quiet longing. "What's your name?" Lena asked gently. The girl hesitated, as if even giving her name might be dangerous. "Mira," she finally whispered. Lena smiled warmly. "That's a beautiful name." Mira didn't smile back, but her shoulders relaxed just enough for Lena to notice. The girl was scared, not just nervous but deeply, painfully scared. Lena's instinct told her there was more to the story than what she saw. "Do you live nearby?" Lena asked softly. Mira lowered her eyes. "No, not really. I go wherever I can." Her voice trembled on the last word. Homeless, Lena thought. Alone. Yeah. Frightened. She wanted to offer food without making Mira feel small, so she pushed her own untouched croissant closer to the middle of the table. "You can have some if you want." "I'm not hungry," she said gently. Mira blinked at the pastry as if it was a miracle. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Mira picked a small piece and ate it slowly, carefully, savoring every bite. Watching her broke something inside Lena. This wasn't a child used to kindness. This was a child used to surviving. Still, something about her didn't fit. She wasn't like most street children. Her posture, her careful movements, the way her eyes scanned the room like she was trained to be aware, it was unusual. Too unusual. Before Lena could ask more, a car outside slammed its brakes, screeching loudly. Mira jolted so violently that she almost dropped her bag. Her breathing quickened immediately, sharp, panicked, uncontrollable. She curled into herself, gripping her bag like she expected someone to drag her away. Lena reached out instinctively. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe here." But Mira shook her head, her eyes wild with fear. It took several long moments before she calmed enough to speak. Her voice was barely audible. "I didn't run away because I'm poor," she whispered. "I ran away because I'm not safe." Lena froze. Mira looked down at her torn hoodie, trembling. "I know I look like someone who has nothing," she continued shakily. "But that's not the truth. People think money makes life perfect. But money made everything worse." Lena leaned in, every instinct screaming that this was not a normal situation. "Mira, what do you mean?" Mira swallowed hard, her eyes filling with tears she tried desperately not to let fall. "I didn't escape the streets," she whispered. "I escaped my family." She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "They're rich, very rich. Everyone thinks I'm lucky, but they don't know what happens behind the gates, behind the walls." She took a shaky breath. "I'm not hiding because I'm poor. I'm hiding because being a millionaire's daughter is the worst thing that ever happened to me." Lena stared at her, shocked, heart pounding, realizing this little girl carried a secret heavier than anything she'd ever imagined. Lena didn't speak at first. She couldn't. Myra's confession hung between them like a trembling string ready to snap, vibrating with pain that had no business belonging to a child. Rain hammered the windows harder, thunder crawling in the distance, but the cafe suddenly felt smaller, too tight, too quiet, too fragile. Mira sat there clutching her cloth bag, knuckles white, eyes desperately scanning the room as if someone might burst in at any moment to drag her back. "Mira," Lena whispered finally, her voice soft but steady. "You can tell me. Whatever it is, you're safe with me." Myra's throat moved as she swallowed, her breath shaking as if even speaking her truth could summon danger. "People think my family is perfect," she said, her voice cracking. "They think we live in a house made of gold. They think I have everything." She looked down at her trembling hands. "But they don't know that having everything means nothing when you don't have love." Her words were soft, but they hit Lena like a punch. "My father is powerful," Mira continued. "Too powerful. He doesn't hear anyone. He doesn't listen. And my stepmother?" Mira hesitated, her breath catching. "She hates me. She always has. She doesn't want me in the house. She says I ruin everything." She wiped her tears quickly as if she wasn't allowed to cry. "I wasn't running away from home," she whispered. "I was running away from the people inside it." Something inside Lena twisted so tightly she thought it might break. This wasn't just sadness. This was trauma wrapped in the small frame of a girl who had never been given permission to be a child. "What about school?" Lena asked gently. Mira shook her head. "I don't go. They say homeschooling is safer. But really, it's just easier for them to forget I exist." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you know what it feels like to be invisible in your own house?" Lena's heart broke a little more. Before she could respond, Mira opened the cloth bag on her lap. Inside were only 3 things: a small notebook, a half-eaten chocolate bar, and a photo. The photo showed Mira standing beside a woman, kind eyes, warm smile, soft hands resting lovingly on Myra's shoulders. "This is my mom," Mira said, her voice trembling. "She died when I was 5. She traced the woman's face with her fingertip. "Everything was different when she was alive. I was different." She looked up, tears spilling now with no strength left to hide them. "When she died, nobody wanted me anymore." Lena felt her chest tighten painfully. No child should ever speak such words, no child should ever feel like a burden. "Why today, Mira?" Lena asked softly. "Why did you run today?" Mira took a shaky breath. "Because last night my father told me something." She hesitated, and then the words came out like broken glass. "He said he was sending me away. To a boarding school in another country. Somewhere far. Somewhere I couldn't interfere." She sniffed hard. "He said it would be better for everyone. Better if I wasn't around anymore." Lena covered her mouth, horrified. "So I left before they could send me," Mira whispered. "I didn't take anything expensive. I didn't want them to track me. I just wanted to breathe." Her voice cracked completely. "I just wanted one day where I wasn't a problem." The cafe noise faded from Lena's awareness. All she could see was the small girl in front of her who carried emotional scars no child should ever endure. She reached across the table and gently touched Myra's hand. "You're not a problem," she said firmly. "You're a child who deserves love, safety, and a life that doesn't hurt." Myra's lips trembled, and for a moment she looked like she might collapse from relief. But then the cafe door burst open, slamming against the wall. A tall man in a dark coat stepped inside, shaking off rain. Mira froze instantly, the color draining from her face. Her breath hitched and her eyes widened with terror. She ducked down, pulling her hood over her head, gripping the table edge so tightly her fingers turned white. "Is that?" Lena whispered, but Mira interrupted in a panic-stricken whisper. "That's my father's driver." Her whole body began to shake uncontrollably. "He's looking for me." The man scanned the cafe, checking each table one by one. Lena felt Myra's terror vibrating through the air like electricity. Without thinking, Lena slid her chair closer, wrapping an arm around the trembling girl. "I won't let him take you," she whispered fiercely. Mira looked up, her eyes wide with shock, and hope she didn't trust. "But he'll force me," Mira whispered. "He always does." Lena's voice hardened with a quiet determination she herself didn't expect. "Not if I stand in the way." Mira stared at her like she couldn't believe someone was choosing her. The driver stepped closer. Mira buried her face in Lena's side. And in that moment something inside Lena shifted, not just sympathy, not just concern. A vow. A silent promise born from the pain she saw in this little girl. She didn't know how, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Mira would not face this alone. Not anymore. The driver's footsteps grew louder as he approached, scanning each corner with the sharpness of someone who had been ordered not to fail. Myra's trembling only worsened, and Lena could feel her heartbeat pounding against her arm, frantic and terrified. She tightened her hold protectively, shifting subtly so Mira was hidden behind her body. The driver reached their table, his eyes narrowing at Lena first before lowering toward the small figure behind her. "Excuse me," he said in a low, practiced voice, "I'm looking for a girl." She wandered off without permission. That one word, permission, made Mira flinch. Lena's jaw tightened. "There's no child here who belongs to you," she said calmly, her voice firm but controlled. The driver glanced around her shoulder, suspicion rising. "It's very important I take her home. Her father is extremely worried." Mira let out the smallest, broken whisper behind Lena. "He's lying." Lena's patience snapped silently. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and stared directly into the man's eyes. "If her father was so worried," she said evenly, "he should try being a parent instead of sending an employee to drag her back like property." The driver stiffened, caught off guard. "Ma'am," he began again, irritation sharpening his tone, "I don't want trouble. Step aside." But Lena didn't move. Not an inch. Not even when the man reached slightly forward. The room felt charged, like everyone sensed something was happening. Even the barista paused mid-movement, eyes flicking between them. Then, before anything could escalate, the cafe door swung open a second time, this time revealing a tall woman in her early 40s, soaked from the rain, dressed in a dark business suit, her expression thunderous. The driver froze instantly and stepped back. Myra's breath caught again. "That's her assistant," the driver muttered under his breath as if explaining to himself. The woman walked straight to their table, ignoring the driver completely. She kneeled down beside Mira with a gentleness that didn't match her fierce entrance. "Mira," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "I've been looking everywhere for you." Myra's eyes widened, not with fear but with confusion. "Miss Claire?" The woman nodded, tears gathering instantly. "Yes, sweetheart. Your father finally told me what he planned. Boarding school. Overseas. Without even asking you." Her voice broke with disbelief and anger. "I refused. And when I realized they wouldn't listen, I left to find you myself, because your mother would never forgive me if I didn't protect you." Mira stared at her in shock. "You knew my mom?" Claire nodded. "I loved your mother. She trusted me. I promised her I'd look after you." Something in Mira shattered, and healed, in the same moment. She launched forward, wrapping her arms around Claire's neck, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. Claire held her tightly, whispering soothing words into her hair. The entire cafe watched in silence as years of loneliness poured from a child who had never been allowed to cry. When the driver tried to step forward again, Claire shot him a glare so cold he froze mid-step. "If you touch her," she said, "I'll personally make sure your employment ends today." The man backed away immediately. Claire turned back to Lena, her voice softening. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "You don't know what you've done. You don't know how close she was to being sent somewhere she'd never recover from." Lena swallowed, overwhelmed by the emotional weight of the moment. "She just needed someone to listen," she whispered. But Mira pulled away from Claire slightly, turning to Lena with tear-filled eyes. "No," she said, shaking her head. "I needed someone who cared." She reached out and grabbed Lena's hand, a small, trembling gesture that held more power than any words could. Claire looked between them and then breathed in deeply. "Mira, there's something else." Mira tensed. "What?" Claire hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Your mother left something behind for you. A letter. I wasn't allowed to give it to you until you were 10. Your father hid it. I took it back." Myra's lips parted in disbelief. "A letter? From my mom?" Claire nodded and reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out an envelope, worn at the edges, protected like it was something sacred. Mira stared at it as if it were a living piece of her mother. Her fingers trembled as she took it. She didn't open it yet. She simply held it against her chest as tears streamed silently down her cheeks. Lena felt her own throat tighten. After a long moment, Mira whispered, Can I read it with you? Both of you?" Claire nodded instantly. Lena did too. They sat together in the booth, the three of them, while the rain softened outside as if the storm itself had calmed for this moment. Mira opened the letter slowly, hands shaking, breath trembling. Her mother's handwriting flowed across the page like a warm embrace. And as Mira read her mother's words, words full of love, hope, pride, and promises that hadn't died even when she had, something inside her finally healed. She leaned into Lena's shoulder, tears falling freely, and whispered, "Thank you for letting me sit here." Lena wrapped an arm around her, holding her close. "Of course," she whispered. "You can sit here, as long as you want." And for the first time in years, Mira smiled, A real smile, soft and trembling but genuine. A smile that proved the truth her mother had written at the end of the letter. You will never be alone, Mira. Someone good will find you when you need them most. And today she did.